Well, hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand, sitting in for Todd, who's off today, and don't fret, he will return to the chair tomorrow. Well, how are you making out with the boil water advisory? Listeners on the Dartmouth side of the harbor are likely saying, what? Boil water advisory. Of course, they're not impacted, but about 200,000 people living here are, including me and my family and this radio station and many of you that are listening to us this morning. Now, bottled water, boy, was it a scarce commodity yesterday? Not sure what it looks like it stores today. I haven't been there yet, but yesterday, nary a bottle to be found where I went to look anyway. So it was to the pots on the stove and let the boiling begin, right? It takes an event like this to really demonstrate how reliant we are on the tap, isn't it? Felt like I couldn't keep up yesterday. Boil a bunch of water, then it's gone. Washing dishes, brushing your teeth, cooking. It goes quickly. Now, Halifax Water says it was a fuse that blew and put the system off, and they were just days away from bringing in a redundancy system that was born in the last boil water event that we endured in July. Does Halifax Water get a pass here? Do we just chalk it up as a freak accident? Or do you want to see some accountability? We'll ask you that question when we open up the phone lines after 12 o'clock today. Don't forget, 11 o'clock to noon, Dr. John Gillis will be here for house calls. So if you have any questions, some medical-related questions, get them all ready, and we'll throw the lines open at 11 o'clock for that. Well, Donald Trump, but that name doesn't get mentioned at all anymore, does it? Anyway, Donald Trump again yesterday doubling down on his threat to impose that tariff February 1st. Now some suggesting that he's using it as a chip to reopen the North American trade deal. I don't. Personally, I just don't. I really don't. He said as much yesterday that the issues at the borders are why he wants to impose the tariffs. Francois-Philippe Champagne says Canada needs to stop playing defense with tariffs and move to the offense. I'm not really sure what that means, but let's be honest. If the Canadian government today put in some kind of preemptive measure or took a shot at this or whatever, wouldn't that just encourage Trump? Everybody has said from listening to this show for the last 8, 10, 12 years with Trump being in the picture, he's transactional. It's with the way he does business is that he is transactional. He's reactionary, and if we put a preemptive strike on, wouldn't it just say, okay, fine, right? I'm not sure if that's the right approach. Anyway, something else you might want to discuss during the open hour today. And also, very quickly before we go to our first guest, BC Premier David Eby yesterday suggested that we look very carefully and rethink things like trips to the United States and purchases of American products. My question to you today, and I'm interested in your take on this because I had a couple of conversations yesterday with friends, colleagues, and even family members. Has the change of government in the United States and the threats of tariffs and the notion of the 51st state and the January 6th pardons and all of the changes that Trump announced on Monday, will it impact you traveling to or doing business in the United States? I know it's easier for some than others. Some have family down in the United States. You know, we're almost a border province to the United States. I know there's water between us, but we have a lot of friends and family in Maine and in New England, and those kinds of things are further south. But has it changed your thought on it? Are you thinking, well, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not going to go to the United States. Show my opposition to what's going on there with my dollar, or is it whatever? The weather's nice, or just I don't really care what Donald Trump does. You know, I've got friends, I've got family, I've got connections in the United States. I have property. I go down there every year. We go to Disney World every year. We go to Las Vegas every year. We go to New Orleans. That got snow yesterday, by the way. They were skiing on Bourbon Street. Wild. Anyway, that's my question to you today. I'm looking forward to your answers when we open up the telephone lines at 12 o'clock today. Don't forget, and I'll mention it once more before we move on, Dr. Gillis will be here from 11 till 12 to answer your medical-related questions. But first, I don't know if you caught it last week, but the Nova Scotia's Energy Minister's Trevor Boudreau and said that his department now is going to review all relevant information, this is from the CBC, by the way, as they prepare to move forward with an election campaign promise to cap the amount power rates in the province are allowed to increase. The comments came after a report from a credit ratings agency that warned that political interference in the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board process could lead to a rating downgrade for Nova Scotia Power. The minister's quote, his response was, they've expressed their opinion on it. We'll take all of that into consideration, but at the end of the day, it's about affordability for Nova Scotians. Joining me on the line today to put a little context on this and have a discussion, Dalhousie University engineering professor who's an expert in energy systems and climate change and is a good friend of the show. We welcome Larry Hughes back. Larry, how are you?
Very well, Dan. Yourself?
I am well, sir. I guess let's start there. Would it matter that the government sort of instituting a rule with how power rates would be governed? Would it matter if it impacted the utilities credit rating?
Yes. That's the short answer. Yes, it would, which then, of course, it ripples through the entire system in that it gets harder to raise capital, and then it becomes harder to expand, to use that capital to expand the system, to upgrade the grid and so forth. So it isn't the best of ideas.
Larry, how often does Nova Scotia Power, or by an extension its parent company, Emera, go to creditors to generate money for the Nova Scotia grid? It seems, and maybe it's just my observations, but it seems when there's hurricane damage or there's some kind of upgrade, that tends to get passed along to the ratepayer.
Eventually it does, of course. But if there is a need for a large capital project, like a significant grid upgrade, or if Nova Scotia, when the Maritime Link was put in, there will be times when Nova Scotia Power needs additional capital, and so it does happen more often than not.
So an increase in or a decrease in the credit rating would mean that the utility would have to pay more in interest, right?
It costs more to borrow, yes.
And that then obviously would get passed on to us, right?
Well, sooner or later, yes.
So the government's plan to change this and cap the amount the power rates are allowed to increase, is it going to end up costing us more than it's going to benefit us?
I would look at it more how they want to do this first.
Sure.
And how they want to do it from their election promise was, we'll cap power rate increases, Canadian average increase. And the trouble with a promise like that is a lot of the utilities across the country are completely different from Nova Scotia's. There's only two similar to Nova Scotia's, and that's Alberta and Saskatchewan. The other provinces, BC, Manitoba, Quebec, Newfoundland, and Labrador, are primarily almost entirely hydro. Ontario is hydro and nuclear. New Brunswick is a bit of an outlier, but it's also heavily influenced by government policy. So how you would pick an average price from that, I don't see how that could be done easily. In Ontario, the rates are subsidized by the provincial government. So it all gets, it would be somewhat of a messy approach to take.
I think that our listeners, Larry, will say that there needs to be some sort of relief to these rates. Is there a proper way that they can cap these things, or should we just let the free market reign?
Okay, well, there's sort of two answers to this.
Sure.
One is, what you could do is, and I've often wondered about this, if the province keeps, or if the premier keeps meddling in the UARB and gets the Nova Scotia Power down to to what he considers a reasonable price, will he try to buy it? And then we're back to where we were under the Buchanan era, with the government really meddling in electricity policy. The other approach, and it's the one I think should be looked at, is to change rate structures. As it stands now, we have 4 rate structures, 2 of which have been around for a very long time. The domestic service tariff, which most Nova Scotians pay, and it's about 18 cents a kilowatt hour now. The time of day rate, which if you have an electric storage heater or in-floor heating, which charge in the overnight hours. So when the electricity is cheap, they charge. That's the time of day rate. The two new ones are time of use, which depends on the peak times and whether it's during the summer. And these are incredibly expensive. Well, they can be. The weekday peak, for example, for time of use is 35 cents a kilowatt hour. But I think this is intended for people with, say, an electric vehicle. And you would have cheap summer rates, but very expensive winter rates. So essentially you'd be encouraging people, well, you would be allowing people to drive during the summer very cheaply. The other is critical peak pricing, which has reasonably cheap rates, 15.5 cents a kilowatt hour as opposed to 18. But during one of the peaks, it's $1.70 a kilowatt hour. So even in this case, you need some way of getting you through the so-called critical peak, of which are 4 hours long. There needs to be, fine, these are four. One of them, everybody has the time of day if you have the right type of heating system. The other two require people, without putting too fine a point on it, people who have money and can afford a battery system to get them through the periods, either critical peak or the weekday, the peak. Anyway, the fifth approach, which I've advocated for longer than I care to remember, is what is referred to as an inverted block rate. And the inverted block rate gives you a very inexpensive rate for, say, your first 250 kilowatt hours. And then the next block, it may be the remainder of your electricity usage for the month, that has a much higher rate. So you would have inexpensive electricity for your first block and more expensive electricity for your second block. And as an example, maybe, and this is just an example, maybe you'd be paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour for the first 250, and in the anything beyond 250, you'd be paying 20 cents. So if you had 250 kilowatt hours usage, you'd be paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And if you had 300, well, your first 250 would be at 10 cents. The remainder would be at 20 cents. To my way of thinking, this is a much, it comes very close to sort of a flat rate, a flat low-income rate. But, for example, if they change the domestic service tariff this way, they would be encouraging people to use less electricity, which in many respects is what the Nova Scotia Power would like them to do. So if we could convince the province to, say, study and ideally implement an inverted block rate, you would be giving people an opportunity, low-income, well, many Nova Scotians, an opportunity to do things with electricity and try to keep it consumption down, while at the same time saving money.
Give them an incentive to conserve.
Yes, and although that's not the primary point of it, they with the inverted, because there is another rate called the declining block rate. With the inverted block rate, if you do happen to be low income and you don't use much electricity, you're not going to be paying much for it. And if you do, for example, use 260 kilowatt hours in our example, you'd only be paying the 20 cents for the additional 10 kilowatt hours.
Larry, we're just out of time. I appreciate yours, sir.
Oh, anytime. More than happy, Don. That
is Larry Hughes. He's from Dalhousie University and an expert in the energy world, I guess. Is it better for taxpayers if the utility stays in the UARB's preview as opposed to the government? I've said here many times, I know Todd has as well, that anytime governments take things over, it gets really expensive. We're going to take a break. We're going to take our first break here on the program. I forgot to thank Vanessa, so I'm going to do that now. Thank you very much to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass, who is working double duty today, not only doing what she does every day and does it very well, but she's also trying to keep me in line, and y'all know that that's not easy. How about we talk to somebody that has a new album out, which we do quite frequently here, except this has a bit of a twist to it, and it involves AI. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes.
Thanks.
All right. You're listening to There Is Ian James. Jane's my mistake. And he is an artist here in Nova Scotia that you may or may not be familiar with. And we do talk to artists here quite often here on the program because we like to foster Nova Scotia talent and give them a platform to share their creativity and their hard work and their music. But this story has a significant twist to it. I don't know if you've heard about this, but artificial intelligence is weaving its way into everything that we do, and it's also creating all kinds of questions and concerns about what's copyrighted and is it original work, or in our world, is it plagiarism? But this story was bizarre, and when Vanessa showed it to me, I said, we have to talk to this guy because I honestly didn't even think that this would happen. So I'm very pleased to welcome into the studio Mr. Ian James. Ian, how are you?
I'm great, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so tell me how you found out about this. Somebody posted a song or an album or music onto Spotify or one of these streaming services that has your name on it and is billing it as your work, but it isn't you.
Exactly, yeah. So I was getting ready. The whole thing started, I was getting ready to go to a gig a couple weeks ago. It'd be 2 weeks Saturday, and I got an email from Spotify for Artists, which is like a portal that we log into to upload our music, check the status of, check who's listening,
right.
all that data that you need as an artist. And it said, get ready for your new release. You've only got 3 days until your new song, Street Alone, comes out. And there's an artwork, which doesn't have a picture of me. Now, looks like an AI-generated piece of artwork. It's a man from behind, so there's no actual face. And it looks like Gotham City or something. It's like a dark nighttime streetscape. So I kind of laughed. I was like, what's this about? So I messaged Spotify about it, and they did get back to me relatively quickly, and I was live chatting with them. And they're like, "Oh, so you think this isn't you?" I'm like, "No, I know this isn't me.
I know it's not me.
This isn't a hunch. This is a fact."
Right.
You know. So then I was perplexed by it, and so it seemed that they had shut it down. And they're like, "Okay, it was put there mistakenly." So I kind of figured it was a Spotify exclusive thing because when I logged on to the similar portal on Apple Music, it showed no upcoming releases. So I was like, okay, looks like it was somebody just did it on Spotify. So then Friday, a week ago Friday, I get a message from a friend saying, "Hey, I love your new album," when a laughing emoji. And I was like, what? And so anyway, I go on it, and it had come on to Apple Music, and it was on my profile showing Ian Jane's latest release, Street Alone. So, as we were saying before we came on air, there's certainly a lot of John Smiths
right
in the world. A person's name isn't trademarked, so theoretically, okay, there absolutely could be another Ian James out there releasing music. So, but I Googled it till I was blue in the face, and I can't find anything of anyone releasing music on any platform, on any social network as Ian James. When you look at the credits, which you can go into with Apple Music and Spotify, it shows me as the songwriter, me as playing piano, me as the producer. And so I found the distributor of the music. They haven't yet confirmed that it is AI. They said it's common because of, many people can have the same name, to have music uploaded on the wrong profiles, but nobody has stepped forward and come at me online saying, "Hey, I'm Ian James too." And
because songwriters and music creators, that those are your children, right? Your songs are your children. Like, you take pretty serious ownership of that stuff.
Well, you do. I mean, a title can't be copywritten, and a name can't be copywritten. So somebody could theoretically release an album as Ian James and play all of my songs, and that's not really copywritten. I mean, if they played my actual songs, but if they took my song titles and wrote different songs with the same titles,
it's the music that's copywritten.
It's the music that's the copywritten. So yeah, it's really strange. So I've had Matt Gorman from Cox and Palmer, who's done some entertainment law stuff for me in the past, just contractual stuff. I'm not like Tony Soprano.
Right.
I'm like, like my legal trouble. But anyway, and he's looking into it, and he's reached out to the distributor as well. They haven't confirmed anything yet. It's still on my Apple Music profile. It can take a while to come off. But when you listen to the music, like it sounds very, very clearly AI. Like all of the songs on the record are in alphabetical order.
Right.
A lot of the titles are similar titles to other popular songs, but the music is different. There's no vocals. The only vocals there is like a clearly like AI or like digital representation of like a kind of choir sound. Like you've been able to make that sound on a keyboard for 30, 40 years.
Right.
Like that's not even really that current. I mean, they theoretically could have just used data scraping to like make an AI voice that sounded just like mine too, but they haven't. So I don't know. It's really peculiar.
Why? That's the question I have.
Well, money, right?
Well,
So the money to be made in streaming is in volume,
right.
As it's been widely complained about. The rate per stream is really, really small, right? And which is not great. You also have to consider the fact that there's 100 to 150,000 songs a day coming out on the streaming services globally. So if every one of those people got paid good money, then like they can't make any money at that either. But that being said, the money is in the volume, right? So and if you have all the ownership and you do a big volume, then if you had a ton of these things happening, like what's happening to me, like 100,000, 200,000, 500,000,
right?
That could scale up to be pretty good money.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, I think what I'm speaking to this company on Friday that a friend introduced me to who investigate this sort of thing, and if this is in fact what I'm speaking of, how that business model works is they have bots stream the music. So it'd be like the equivalent of if you put your computer on Spotify to play a song continually and left it running 24/7,
right?
And then you had 10,000 computers,
right? It's like a bot farm, right?
Yeah, it's like a bot farm, like
right.
It's a stream farm they call it, or
okay.
a bot farm, or so. Those are investigated, really regularly by the streaming services. There's also some conspiracy theories, which truthfully don't seem too far off, that streaming services maybe could create that themselves. If they created their own content, then they don't have to pay out those royalties. So why not just populate your streaming service with a huge percentage of AI generated music that you own all the rights of and it costs you nothing to make, and then save yourself paying out those subscriptions?
Because that is I know you talked about it's not, you can't copyright a name, but because it's your profile, it's on your site, it's everything you except you. Are you able to get royalties for that?
No, because the royalties are paid through the distributor. So
right.
The person that uploads the music, uses the distributor. The distributor collects those royalties, and then they distribute them back to the copyright holder or the master owner, right? So in this case, on Apple Music, now that is a legal problem. Which again, if it was just another person with the same name, would just be a mix-up. It does happen where music gets put on the wrong profile. So in the case of Apple Music, that song right now that whole album, it's 20 songs, is still live on my Apple Music profile. Because I complained about it on Spotify before it came out, because I had the notification ahead of time, they took it off my profile on Spotify, but re-uploaded it as Ian James with a new user account. So if you search Ian James on Spotify, you get me.
Yeah.
If you search, I found, it might be different depending on other people's search preferences. I had to type Ian Jane's Street Alone into the Spotify search bar, and then the drop down showed my profile and this new profile.
We've just about out of time, Ian. Is it impacting your revenue from your site? Like, because people are listening to something you're not getting any credit or any money for?
Man, I'm scaled down so far. I have such a small audience that my digital revenue is not a non-starter. It buys me a coffee once every couple weeks.
Cool.
So not really. I'm just interested to talk about it and to make awareness of how different this is now and how important it is to go to an artist show.
Right.
Buy a ticket, because really that's what it's back to. We're back to pre-phonograph days now.
Yeah. It's not about the record sales anymore. It's about the touring and the merch.
Absolutely.
Ian, appreciate your time, sir. Keep us in the loop when you figure it all out, will you?
I will. Thanks for having me, Dan.
That is Ian Janes. Check him out on Spotify and Apple Music. Not the fake one, the real one. We're going to stop down, take a break for the news. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. We're back in minutes. So is this real or is it an AI song? Isn't that just wild? Some people will find out ways to take advantage of a system and they don't care who or what gets in their way. Wow, that was just bizarre to me. Anyway, glad you're still with us. I'm Dan Alstrand in for Todd today. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. It is Wednesday, and we're rolling along on a chilly day. I know that, and it's well known I don't have any children, but I do have family members that do, and I've been sort of ancillary to the discussions about our next topic matter here, and it's that age-old question, age-old question. We've only had them around for 25 years, but the age-old question now is when is the appropriate time for our children to get a phone, to get a smartphone, to get connected to the world that many of us are addicted to, and so on and so forth. And I think that if you talk to 10 different parents, you're probably going to get 10 different answers with regards to that. But there's a group out there that is advocating that the answer to that should be fairly simple, and it's just don't. And we're very pleased to welcome to the program a member of the advocacy group Unplugged Canada. It's Jenna Poste, and Jenna's in the studio with me today. Welcome.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
So there's going to be a lot of people that are listening to us right now, like we have about 5 holes in our head saying, what do you mean don't? Right? Like the cell phones are here to stay. Smartphones are here to stay. I need to be in contact with my child at all times because of the world we live in. Your group says, well, hang on a minute. Let's take a look at this. I guess why is the first question. Why is it important that we are careful when we give our kids access to these things?
Well, I think what it is we've got a lot more research now coming out. 10 years ago, we didn't know the impact of giving kids these devices this young in their development. And now, the evidence is overwhelming. It's impacting mental health. There's higher rates of anxiety and self-harm, suicide. And so just the information is more widely known now that giving a smartphone, and that's specifically, I want to say smartphone, not just a regular phone to communicate.
Can you even get the old ones anymore?
You can. The flip phones are making a comeback.
Nice.
And there's a lot of products actually out there now trying to make a simple phone, not only for kids, but actually a lot for adults as well, who are wanting to maybe escape a lot of the addiction and notifications.
But still have that connection to mom.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. We're not saying no technology. We're not saying never give one to them. It's just think that there's more options, just giving them your old iPhone as soon as they're old enough to maybe have some independence and maybe start coming home off the bus on their own, or if you need to contact them, when they're not with you. This
discussion really came to light last year when the province started pushing rules through to the I like to call them school boards because Center for Education is too hard to say, and changing and banning cell phones in classrooms and restricting use in classrooms. And then the discussions happened. We all thought that the parents thought that the world was going to end. The teachers were concerned about it, but anecdotally and from my conversations with union members, with teachers, with administrators, with parents, is that, hey, this is kind of working.
It is. And that's what overwhelmingly I've heard is parents, kids, teachers, administration just say, this has been a really good change. We've got it completely bell to bell for elementary students, and in junior high and high school, it's out of the classrooms. And even that small change has made a huge impact on seeing kids interact with each other more. They're making eye contact. They've got better attention in the classroom. But I think there is still some more we could be doing on the junior high level, because that middle school age is what's really the most impactful time in their development. And that's typically when they're starting to get access to these phones. So I think that's what we need to consider still.
But do you say that it's important for kids to learn about these phones because they are a part of everyday life and they need to know how these things work and how to use them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what's critical, though, I think, is figuring out how to introduce it safely. There's unfortunately a lot to navigate on parental controls and trying to make these devices safe to kind of keep some of the harmful things away from them, but give them the tools that are incredible and give lots of opportunities for learning and exposure to technology. It's just trying to do that in a way that's developmentally appropriate and prepare them for what they're going to inevitably get exposed to.
Is there a magic age? Is there this is like the 16 years, I'm dating myself now, but 16 when you could drive a car, like is there an age that science is saying is the appropriate time to do this?
Well, I don't think there's an exact science to the age. I think many recommendations coming out from the experts are high school. So kind of around that 16 years is the recommendation. When you think about it, there's all kinds of age restrictions on other addictive substances that are really more 18, 19. When you think of alcohol and gambling and, cigarettes, what's the difference between that and what we have right now with what we see in social media and some of the gaming aspects of these devices?
What do you say to the peer pressure question? Again, as I mentioned, I don't have any kids, but I've got nieces and nephews, and I hear the conversations, and I try to be just the observer on the wall, because that's it's a parent's job to do that. But I get John's got one, or Sally's got one, and I should have one, and all my friends have them. What's your response to that?
Well, I think that's where everyone's in right now. Everyone's got one because everyone's got one. So the movement that Unplugged Canada is trying to provide is basically give parents a platform where they can actually pledge to delay. And the more people that kind of step up and say, you know what, I want to delay this. If you can have a conversation with your kids' closest friends' parents and start together, it's much easier when you're together doing this. If you're on your own, parents feel isolated. They feel like they have to kind of give in. But if we can work together and more people talk about this and more people voice it, it's a lot easier, because then they're not alone. I think the goal here is that, soon that there won't be few kids that don't have them anymore. There'll be a lot more that don't. And it'll continue to sway that pressure the other way, where there's a lot less kids having it and a lot less feeling of kids being left out if they don't have one.
You hear it from the kids. Obviously you deal with this a lot. Do you hear from the kids, and are they on board with it? Do they think it's a good idea?
Well, you know what? What I think is the most telling is the kids that have kind of grown through this. So much of the Generation Z is, if you ask them, there was a study that went out that said 47% wish things like TikTok and Snapchat had never been invented. They actually advocate for parents to delay smartphones for kids because they've lived through it. They see the impact it's had on their friends, their own mental health, their own anxiety. And so, the kids who are younger, I think they're still in that phase of feeling like this is when I'm getting to an age where I'm getting some independence. This is what I want. But we also need to do more work to educate the younger kids about what the impacts are, so that they, the ones I know who have had these conversations with their kids, they're actually like, whoa, I kind of actually want to put it away more than I thought I wanted to, because I'm actually seeing it myself. They're getting more self-aware, and they're understanding the long-term impacts this could have on them.
What role can adults play in this? I know we've talked about the parenting angle, but adults are addicted to these things, and kids are sponges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they see this. Can we, as adults, perhaps set a better example than we're doing now?
Absolutely. I mean, I can say personally, I work in tech. My work is on my device. I've been trying to be a lot more conscious of my own use, especially in front of my kids. So I put my own limits on certain applications. I reduce as many notifications that aren't urgent as possible. When I do need to use it in front of them, I actually try to narrate what I'm doing with them. So maybe I'm looking up a recipe for dinner. Maybe I'm messaging, their friend to see if they're able to play later with them. So they can see it's a tool for adults. And then if I do need to use it more, I try to step out of the room and just try to set an example, because they do observe how you use technology, and many times they emulate that. Right.
And your kids don't have phones, correct?
No, they're only 5 and 7. We actually don't have any, personal devices yet.
But, it's interesting because, the Generation Z thing is something that this is not just the only thing that I've heard that they are kind of are catching on, and they're slowing down. They're getting back to back to whole foods and originality and those kind of things. And maybe generationally we'll get a grip on this addiction, because it's kind of out of control right now.
It is, and I think many people are getting tired of it. You
Right.
know, parents are getting really tired of it. They're seeing the changes. As soon as that child has that device, it becomes the center of their life. And it becomes the number one thing that families have arguments over: screen time and devices. And so if we can, again, educate ourselves on what the impacts are, learn, you can make a more informed decision on how you can set your own, family limits and kind of rules around tech. And again, it's not about getting rid of it all. It's here to stay. We need to embrace it, and we just need to try to navigate it as safely as we can.
Jenna, is there any resources available for parents that maybe want to go down this road?
Yeah, there's quite a few resources. If you want to go on the Unplugged Canada site. We also, here in Nova Scotia, we have got a local chapter. We're actually putting on a few events. We had one on Thursday. If you check us out, we are on social. It's like one of those things where it's one of the true ways you can still reach people, but it's Unplugged Canada _NS, and we share a lot of research on that, a lot of tools. Organizations like Protect Young Eyes has a lot that parents can use to navigate tech safely and create a healthy balance. And we're just going to continue to try to, get this information out there so people can be aware.
Jenna, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
As Jenna Poste, Unplugged Canada, it's interesting. Will be interesting to see with the new rules in schools and groups like Jenna's group, advocating for this. If we can sort of work this phone addiction out, because you don't have to go look far to see people who have their head buried in their phone more than they're looking up. We're going to stop down, take another break. When we come back, tariffs and Trump. What does this mean for the seafood industry in Atlantic Canada? You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Sorry, I was just checking my cell phone. I'm kidding. Absolutely kidding. We do have an addiction, a massive addiction to the cell phone, and it's almost refreshing to hear that that kids. This is how things change, people. This is how we affect change. Is that it's generational change. My generation was mostly split on the cell. We didn't have them when I was a kid, right? I'm that old, and then Vanessa's generation. And the younger have grown up with these things, and they've become a part of their lives. And now the kids are starting to realize that, hey, maybe there is more to life than looking at that screen. Wild. Donald Trump is in the news. Well, will be in the news this week, next week, and probably for the next 4 years, as he takes control of the Oval Office and starts to implement his, what are they calling it, the legislative agenda? The golden age of America is back again, and he is. There are no holds barred when it comes to the president of the United States these days, and Canada is continues to be and is in Donald Trump's crosshairs with the threat of 25% tariff. That kind of went away on Inauguration Day for a couple of hours, but now it's back, and he again doubled down on it yesterday, saying that, the borders in Canada are terrible, Canadian drugs are terrible, and we're going to put a tariff on Canadian imports into the United States, and that is going to have wide-ranging impacts on industry, not only here in Atlantic Canada, but right across the country, and I know many people are really nervous about it. But what does it mean here in Atlantic Canada? Very pleased to welcome back to the program today to put a little perspective on this, from Dalhousie University, Dr. Robert Huish. How are you, Doctor?
Good, Dan. Thanks so much.
Now, the news of the day, and I know this might catch you a little bit off guard because it wasn't what we were going to talk about. The news of the day said that he might be using this as a bargaining chip. Is he? Do you think he is? Do you think that this is just his way to open up the new NAFTA?
There is a lot of that goes into Donald Trump's mind about coming down really hard with any sort of negotiation or discussion, and then watching the other side sort of squirm, and then coming back and making a deal. That's sort of how a lot of people have thought that Trump's mind kind of works, and they refer to his Art of the Deal book. There's also another side of Donald Trump that really shows his admiration for professional wrestling. And I mentioned the professional wrestling because often when you look at that sort of way of creating a story, the characters that are in there are over the top. They're bombastic. They're larger than life. But there's usually a kernel of truth or storyline underneath all that showcasing. And in this case, the threat of tariffs, which is a very ham-fisted approach to any sort of foreign policy, is that sort of showcasing. And what really is a concern of Trump, the Republicans, and a lot of his MAGA supporters is the border issue. And to say that the Mexican border is the big deal in terms of the quantity of people attempting to cross and items going back and forth, but the Canadian border is also included in this. And there's a bit of evidence to show that Canada needed to do better on issues of border security and visa processing, for example. That the Americans have got quite a bit of data to show, yes, we keep having these incidences at the Canadian border that they want to see fixed up. And when you put it all together, that desire to see a stronger Canadian border is being sort of touted in this showcasing of, well, if you don't do it, we're just going to destroy your economy.
He loves wrestling so much, he named Linda McMahon Education Secretary.
Sure did.
Wow. Anyway, I guess the next, obviously, most important question with that is, how far along this do we go? Do we play chicken? Philip Franz Champagne is saying that, hey, maybe we need to play offense with this. Would that just egg him on? There's so many questions.
The thing is with Trump, every time that he gets put in a question or a newsroom and the journalists ask him, are you serious about this? He will always double down, and he will never back off on any threat that he's making to the camera, even though the news conference closes and he goes in and suddenly the policy disappears. As we saw, the tariffs were supposed to come in within the first few hours, and now he's delayed it to February 1st. And probably that's because there's other legislators in Washington and others in his circle that say, as much as you'd like to do a tariff on a lot of Canadian goods, there's a lot of goods that treat the border as being invisible. And one of those products is seafood, right? There's a lot of cross-border traffic where you have fresh seafood here going to the States, getting processed, and then, on it goes. And then you've got fresh catch from the States coming up here, getting processed, and then returned. So things like seafood, cattle is another big one. They don't really care about the border all that much, so it would be really hard to tariff those goods. And the other thing that makes it really tricky to tariff anything in the U.S. is that as much as Trump can take his Sharpie and just start signing away, there still needs to be congressional support for issues like tariffs. And the way it works is that within the U.S. Congress, there's only certain acts that will allow, excise and import tariffs to be levied, and they're usually connected to national security issues. So most of these were created between the 1940s and the 1970s, reaction to World War II, reaction to the Cold War, to try to put pressure on Soviet and Soviet-aligned countries. And really, to get any sort of tariff through Congress quickly, you'd have to make the excuse to say that good, that commodity, or that place is somehow threatening the national security interests of the states.
Is it going to happen? Crystal ball. Is it going to happen? Will we see a tariff?
There's going to be tariffs or Trump taxes. I guess you could also put it to you like that, because it's going to be American consumers who are going to be paying more. The thing is that with seafood in particular, that's really worrisome, is that it's still pretty much a luxury consumption for many Americans. So if the price of lobster does go up by 25 or even 50%, right, there's only going to be a small portion of Americans who are going to feel that. Now, if that happened with automobile parts, if that happened with energy, say from Alberta or for Quebec, more American consumers would be hit by that, and that would create a lot of unpopularity, especially right now in the States where olive oil is going for $30 a bottle and, eggs are going for $12 a dozen. So American consumers are already dealing with inflation, and if he's sloppy with tariffs, they're going to be paying a lot more in the future.
How much pressure can the border states put on President Trump to maybe take a second look at this? Because I know it's not popular in a number of places, North Dakota and Maine and Vermont, those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, Canada has active trade relations with 36 of the 50 states. And then, of course, there's, tourism and small business, but really ingrained, relations and business dealings with the majority of U.S. states. And so the more governors and the more senior senators that are kept aware of just how much a tariff would impact their economy, their current lines of production, the increase of prices for consumers is another thing that they need to be reminded of, but also sort of the longer term impact on their state's economy. Once that's sort of seen, like, look, we have an integrated economy already. We can't just go messing things around like that. That's going to be a big message. And really, the thing with Trump, the finance types and the business types tend to shine towards him. But when you are putting so much uncertainty into any market and into any investment opportunity, people shy away from that. That's exactly why Warren Buffett right now has most of his assets in cash, because when you put this kind of erratic behavior and ham-fisted policies out there, investors shy away from that. And if this is the case, nobody's going to be investing in Montana or North Dakota for a long time.
Rob, always a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Dan.
That is Dr. Robert Huish from Dalhousie University. You're going to stop down, take a break. Blake is going to update us on what's going on in the world. And when we come back, we're going to throw open the telephone lines. It's time for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. If you have a medical-related question, something you'd like a second opinion on, maybe something popped up over the last little while that you'd like to get the doc's thoughts on, here it is. Free access to a physician, which is tough to get in Nova Scotia these days, for 60 minutes. Telephone lines are open. 902-405-6000 is the number. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes.
Dr. John, you're my medicine man. Dr. John, you're my medicine man. I don't use no potion.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand, and it is Wednesday. It is 11:05, and that means it's time now for house calls. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. We're just waiting for Dr. John to connect up with us here, as he does every Wednesday. Don't forget, coming up after the news at noon, we're going to throw open the telephone lines. I've got 3 questions for you today. 1, should we be playing better offense instead of defense with regards to the Trump tariffs? 2, how are you making out with the boil water order? Are you? Many of you aren't, but there's 200,000 of you who are. And how are you? I'm not doing well at all. It's terrible. It's it really reinforces how dependent we've become on the tap, right? And how important potable water is to everyday life. It's almost, well, it is. It's a necessity. I went out yesterday very quickly, and we're still waiting for Dr. John to connect up to the show. That's the reason why I'm dragging along here. But anyway, I went to the store after work yesterday. I didn't get out of here till 1 o'clock or 1:30 in the afternoon, and went to 2 different grocery stores, and the water was gone. It was gone away. So the only other option I have is to boil water, right? And I dug out the pots, and I filled them up, and I put them on the stove, and I thought, okay, I'll be fine, but it goes so quickly, absolutely so quickly. And it felt like I couldn't keep up. I just couldn't keep up. So my question to you on the water situation is this: this is not the first time that we've had a boil water advisory from that facility. We've had all kinds of water issues over the last year, and I'm wondering. Halifax Water says, well, it was a fuse that blew during a power interruption that resulted in this, and we're going to be probably another day, although I haven't got official word yet. Does Halifax Water get a pass on this? Is it one of those just freak accidents that you really can't prepare for? The spokesperson yesterday saying that they were days away from bringing their redundancy system online, and this happened. The redundancy system born, of course, from the last incident that we had in July. Does Halifax Water get a pass? That's a question I'm going to ask you today. And the last question I'll ask, and we're still trying to connect up with Dr. John here. Vanessa's doing what she does, doing the magic behind the microphones there. But the last question I'm going to ask you today, I had some pretty good conversations over the last day or so with friends and colleagues and family members, and some are suggesting that because of the change of government and because of what they've seen thus far from the new president of the United States, that they are going to heed BC Premier David Eby's advice, who suggested yesterday that we think very carefully about our vacations and think very carefully about our the money that we spend in the United States. Are you going to change your plans? Are you going to perhaps not take that vacation to Disney World this year, or perhaps skip the trip to California, or skip the trip to New York City, or down across the border to go shopping in Maine? Or does it not matter to you? 902-405-6000 is the number. What we're going to do here is, while we're continuing to try and connect up with Dr. Gillis, Vanessa is going to take a break. We're going to see if we can sort things out here, and then we'll figure out what's going on the other side of the commercials. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. It is House Calls. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. If you have a medical-related question, here's a great opportunity to get it answered. Dr. John Gillis joins us on the line. Dr. John, how are you this morning, sir?
Doing good. I was up working last night, which I don't usually do, so I'm a little slow moving this morning.
That happens. It happens to the best of us. I guess the first question, Dr. John, this office, many offices, many schools, many places around HRM and in fact right across the country are being whacked by some sort of bug that's going around. Is this just regular stuff? Is this something that we should be concerned about?
No, it hasn't really changed. I mean, at least, unless it's something I'm missing. I mean, for the past, couple months, I'd say we're just getting constantly hit with, waves of viral stuff, and there's, different things out there. COVID's still there, influenza is around, RSV, and it just, people need to be aware it's out there. Most of it's benign, most of it goes away, but it can knock people down, and it comes back to what we've talked about 1,000 times. Take care of yourself. If you're sick, stay home. And if you have to go out, put a mask on. You're not being controlled by the Martians. It's just common sense, and it helps prevent other people from, getting sick.
902-405-6000 is the number. Let's begin the conversation with Karen. Karen, how are you?
Hi, good, thank you.
Your question for Dr. John, please.
My grandson is almost 9. He is adopted, and he experienced methamphetamine in utero, and then for 2 years, in his first 2 years. I'm wondering, and his growth is extremely stunted. He's at the 0 percentile for height and weight. I'm wondering if growth hormones can be effective to help with that.
I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, and a specialized one. So the short answer is maybe. Depending on when it would have needed to be started. Stuff like that. Sometimes they look at it a little sooner. Sometimes they determine, based on the cause of lack of growth, that there's nothing that can be done. That growth hormone won't help. The bottom line is it's important to ask all those questions. I assume you have somebody following this case at the IWK, a specialist, endocrinologist. No,
unfortunately, they moved from BC, so they don't even have a family doctor. So
these questions hadn't been asked out. Yeah, no, fair enough. Those questions hadn't been asked out west. They hadn't had a chance to get to that, I assume.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a pretty specialized case. I get in trouble every time I tell people to go to the ER because the walls have ears. But in this case, a very specialized and unique case, I would probably go to the IWK ER and say, look, we don't have a family doctor. This is a unique case. We need some help here. Can you put us in touch with the just almost got hit by a thunderbolt on someone to go to the ER, but didn't get me. So I'm okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's probably what I would do. If I don't like to say to people, my toe's been sore for 2 months, go to the ER. But this is an unusual case, and the youngster needs some help to get things teed up. And that's probably your best path is to talk to a Pete's ER doc who knows that system and knows referral pathways. So I hope that helps.
Thanks, Karen. Appreciate the call. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Leads me to a question I had, Dr. John. Medical organizations in this country are raising red flags about ER wait times, which you and I have talked about. I know you and Todd have talked about for years here now, and people not going to the ER and self-diagnosing with the good old Dr. Google or whatever website that they find. Are you seeing that in your day-to-day, that people are diagnosing themselves and even misdiagnosing themselves and putting themselves into probably a worse state than they should be?
Yeah, look, I mean, we see all sorts of things. I mean, because people don't want to wait, that's human nature. People don't want to wait, 6, 10, 12 hours. They'll take their symptoms and look stuff up, and that, nothing wrong with that. And I think we all do it to some degree. The problem is context, right? You put, I have a headache. I just got the headache into Google. You're suddenly dying of an aneurysm, and it's time to put your affairs in order. Whereas in reality, you ran into a wall and hit your head, and your head hurts because you hit your head on the wall. So it's context and trying to help people take information and apply it correctly. And look, that doesn't mean that medical professionals have all the answers. It's just experience and algorithms. It's like, it's not the same, but in some ways it is. Your car is making a sound, and experienced mechanic knows that type of vehicle, knows what happens when certain things goes, knows what it sounds like, knows what things to look for, and helps narrow it down from, a serious thing. My car won't go because the engine's broke, or my car won't go, well, you ran out of gas, sir. It's experience and putting those things together. So that is important. And ultimately, we want to give people as many opportunities as we can to access care so that they can get what they need. They don't have to come to the ER. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people who don't have a family doctor for a lot of the reasons we've talked about. And I was talking to colleagues about this last night. We still have, a lot of people, even if they do have a family doctor, but they're being, seen by telemedicine, by phone, which is a very good thing, which I pushed hard for during COVID. But, you can't diagnose belly pain over the phone. You have to lay eyes on somebody and see them. And just saying, well, I don't know, go to the ER, is adding to the backlog, and it's not helping the already strained system.
And that leads me to my next question, Dr. John, and that's the Maple, the service that people are using. Your experience with it, is it beneficial?
Yeah, look, I get very good feedback about Maple. Generally the level of diligence, the attempts to follow up and to make sure people are cared for is high. But again, it is limited. You can't, sometimes you need to put your hands on somebody or listen to them, and you can't do that over the phone or over the internet. And so, so it's a good option for people who need meds renewed, who have, simple problems or problems where, it's fairly clear what's wrong. But it's not a replacement. And, I think, we're seeing government and the health authorities take a look at these things, thinking, how do we deal with that segment of the population that, if there's 100 Maple calls and, maybe 80 of them are just fine to be dealt with over the phone, but the other 20 need someone to lay hands on them. Is there a way to do that without having them spend 8 hours in the ER? Is there a clinic where, the Maple doc can say, look, you're eligible to come to this clinic. A real person will actually listen to your chest, check your belly, talk to you. And, these are some of the things that we have to evolve to.
Is it having an impact? Like you work in the ER every day. So like, are we seeing wait times drop because of the access to these different kinds of telemedicines and the Maple?
I had a good shift last night. It was probably the best one I've had in 5 years. I left at 4 a.m. with nobody to be seen, and my colleague almost had an aneurysm of his own because he's like, what do you mean there's no one to be seen? And I had, very few people to tell him about. people that were staying for tests or for other things. But that's the outlier. I mean, for the most part, it's been an ongoing nightmare. Coming on to 30, 40 to be seen. So, I look at the efforts of the telemedicine services and some of the other things as the pump in the boat that's keeping the water out, the bailing bucket that's keeping the water out. It's keeping us afloat. It's helping. It's well intentioned, but it's not solving long-term problems for a lot of the reasons we've talked about.
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Melissa to the program. Melissa, how are you?
Oh, hi. Yes, I'm okay. Dr. John, I'm 56 years old. I'm not overweight. I don't have diabetes. I've had symptoms of foot neuropathy for about 4, maybe 5 years. My doctor put me on Veinotte, 10 milligrams, and for a little while that kind of helped, but eventually that I had to go up to 20 milligrams a night. I've had an EMG and an NS or NCS done, which was negative, which is good. But I still have this problem, and my doctor says, it's important to find the cause. You have to find the cause. It's important to find the cause of these symptoms. I've gone down a little rabbit hole on, Dr. Google, and I found that neuropathy is often mistaken for something called radiculopathy. And I've also Googled, what further tests after the EMG and NCS. And it says nerve biopsy, a lumbar puncture, genetic testing, nerve imaging, and neuromuscular ultrasounds. My question is to you, it seems like my neuropathy is increasing. It's getting worse. I'll probably go on to 30 milligrams of this Veinotte pretty soon. And what other testing should I be having? I mean, my doctor, when I went to the doctor's office and she said that the EMG and NCS was negative, which is good, I says, okay, what do we do now? And she says, well, what test would you like me to, what test do you want? And, well, I'm not a doctor. I don't know about any of that. So what path should I be taking at this point to get some help with this?
Yeah, so a couple things. I mean, radiculopathy is a fancy word for saying, the nerves, typically in the back where they come out of the spine, are inflamed, pressed on by something, a disc, a muscle, or something else causing irritation. That usually causes pain related to the area that's involved. So in the case of the feet, it would be the lumbar 5, sacral 1 nerves at the very bottom of the spine. Those could be inflamed. You would usually have back pain in addition to kind of foot discomfort, but not always. So the summary of that is, the way to diagnose that is imaging. A CT scan or an MRI of your lumbar spine, of your low back would be the way to do that. That other stuff you've looked up, Dr. Google, I think smoked a big fat one and is overcalling those tests. You do not need a lumbar puncture or all this other stuff to diagnose that. That's extreme. We use lumbar punctures mainly to diagnose meningitis and a few other conditions, but that's overkill. So I would look at getting some imaging of your spine to see if that's the cause. My view of this, you mentioned we have to find the cause, and generally that's valid because we don't want to miss bad things or severe things. I would probably get an X-ray of your low back first because that can be done very quickly. A CT scan takes a few months, an MRI might take a year. X-ray would at least show that you don't have any obvious bone abnormality or signs of breakdown or anything. It's not a good test for the spine, but it's an easy starting point while you're waiting for other stuff. But because I work in pain, often we don't find a clear cause. And, you don't let your house burn down while you're trying to figure out, which plug start with the fire. You try to put the fire out. So in the meantime, 10 or 20 milligrams of Veinotte, which is also known as nortriptyline, isn't very much. You need to get that dose up, or try something else, something like gabapentin or Lyrica, which are newer drugs for nerve pain, which are very effective. They're related to each other. I use both. I don't have a huge preference as to which one to start with, but you need to escalate treating the stuff while you're still looking. You don't want to sit there and feel like crap all day while you're chasing a cause, and a lot of people do that, and that's not good for the patient. Thanks for the call, Melissa. We're out of time. Dr. John will be back after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. This is House Calls. He is Dr. John Gillis. The telephone number is 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. If you have a medical-related question, perfect opportunity. We've got a few lines that are open. You can get in and get on. 902-405-6000. Let's welcome David to the program. David, how are you?
Hi, yeah, not too bad. Hi, Doc. You had mentioned sort of being at work up until 4 a.m. in the morning. So my question is about shift work and sleep disruptions. I guess first question, is 4 a.m. your normal end work time? And then if not, sort of how do you deal with the varying sort of schedules and stuff like that, not just to adjust to sleep, but, dealing with sort of perhaps possible impairment and stuff like that just from lack of sleep?
Yeah, so the shift I mainly do is what they call a casino shift, which is 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Mm-hmm. And then somebody comes in at 4 and works till 10 or 11, which is by design based on, what the body does and what the body can tolerate. And, people hear that and they think it's a short shift. We used to do, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. or even, in some places, not in Dartmouth, but, other spots I've worked in the past, you'd see people do, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. or 8 to 8 and that sort of thing, 12 hours. And, you're right. If you are used to it and, take a nap beforehand, as most people do, most people can adjust their clock to, to stay up to a certain hour and be used to it. Think of a night on the town, or, you're at an event late and you stay up, you push your normal bedtime a few hours. The body can adjust to that, particularly if you do that on a regular basis. Past 4 a.m., those hours used to be brutal. Now, the reality was, 10 years ago, or I guess it might have been even more when we were doing those shifts, it wasn't as busy. Between, 4 a.m. and 7 or 8 a.m., it'd be quiet. The place would be empty. All the patients have been seen. You might even get to lie down and take a nap. Now, those days are long gone. That just doesn't happen anymore. The place is battle stations 24/7. So, you're right. Working, between 4 a.m. and 7 or 8 a.m., you kind of hit a wall, in terms of your ability to, think clearly and, keep up with everything. And that's very much the reason why, these evening shifts, split shifts have been designed. And, for the most part, it works well. And, again, it's not for everybody. It's, personally, it's what I'm used to. And, I take a nap before I go. I work and then I come straight home and go to bed. And, in today's case, I don't normally work Tuesday night. I went in to help somebody who wasn't feeling well. I literally slept till I called Dan here. So, I get 6.5, 7 hours. And, if I wasn't on the radio today, it might have been a bit longer, 7.5. So, I'm used to it. That's what I do. I also only do it one day a week. Others, do more shifts than that. But it really is, trying to make the shifts work for the human body. And also, if you're doing them, set up your schedule so that it, it works for you and you're alert and with it. So,
yeah. Yeah, okay, no, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, the problem I have is sort of, I'm naturally sort of used to being awake by late at night by habit, but then I sort of have another job that actually requires me to be up very, very early, and it's sort of, very difficult to adjust to, but then it's not really a consistent schedule or anything, and you're kind of bouncing back and forth between the sort of late nights and early mornings, and it's tough. Like I find, I can actually get up and sort of function and feel okay and stuff like that, but it's just sort of, the subtle effects of the mind and all that, and especially how they accumulate over time, which I sort of, find the most sort of difficult to deal with, I guess.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it. I know. Sorry, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
It doesn't get any easier. When I was 20, I could do, or 25, I could do 5 straight night shifts and, run to Truro and, attend a party. Now it's like, dragging me arse and, getting my coffee as soon as I wake up. But we manage, and it is, trying to adjust that schedule and make it as optimal as possible for you.
John, obviously, I can attest to this, the hours that I work around here most days. That being said, I struggle with the changeover from weekends to work days. Do you have any tricks, anything that you use to perhaps help along that sleep when you're getting ready for that next week of those late shifts or early morning shifts?
Yeah, I mean it's little things. I try not to, if I'm working a Monday night, which is common, or I worked last night, try to ease off on the caffeine during the day so I can actually get some sleep in the evening for a couple hours. And then, I will have a coffee before I go to work, but you don't want to overshoot. You don't want to be coming off, 4 a.m. bouncing off the walls, singing the Red Bull commercial on the way home. So it's finding that balance. And then all the things about, the buzzword sleep hygiene, which, means, minimize noise, minimize light when you are sleeping before or after, create the ideal conditions. And sometimes people do need sleep aids to get them back on track. I don't do it very often, but every now and again I'll take a sleep aid of some sort if I'm, too wired and can't get to sleep, to try to get my cycle back normal. So probably those are the things. People
have suggested to me that CBD oil is something that they use to get that cycle back. Do you recommend that?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a whole host of things. CBD oil can relax people. It can help sleep. For some people, it's not enough. Melatonin can be effective. Magnesium helps some people. Prescription sleep aids like Zopiclone. Cannabis can be helpful. It's not for everybody. Indica-based cannabis products can help people get to sleep and stay asleep. But again, it's like anything. If you don't want to have too much, you have to know what you're taking. You want to be able to go to sleep but not be, zonked the next day and stopping at Domino's every morning either. So it's finding the right combination for you.
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Stephen to the program. Stephen, how are you?
Not bad. Yourself?
Your question for Dr. John, please.
So I've been sick. I'm off my sickness now. Something hit my system. I'm not really quite sure what it was. But we're going into almost week 2 now, and just the congestion and the phlegm almost seems to be getting worse. Now, recently, about 2 weeks ago, I quit smoking cannabis, and it just made me wondering, is that the lungs repairing themselves by any chance, or is there something going on where it's just a lot of congestion and phlegm?
Yeah, so I mean, a couple things. Some of these viruses that have been going around, RSV in particular, seem to be dragging on big time, a week or two, where people just feel like crap. Again, usually they fade away. Decongestants, for the nasal congestion can help, things like Sudafed, Advil, cold and sinus. Some people need a steroid puffer to settle down the cough and the inflammation. Sometimes it does evolve into a bronchitis or an infection. If it's been 2 weeks.
And we've lost Dr. John. Into the abyss he is gone. What we're going to do, Stephen, I'm going to put you on hold. We'll get back to your question. We're going to take a break while Vanessa reconnects with the good doctor. You're listening to House Calls on the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. This is House Calls. He's Dr. John Gillis. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. Stephen is still on the line, and I lost him again. That was my fault that time. Anyway, we'll get there. We'll get you, Stephen, I promise. 902-405-6000. Sorry, Vanessa. Vanessa's mad at me now. I got really big thumbs, and the buttons are really close together, and it happens. Anyway, it is what it is. 902-405-6000. This gives me an opportunity, and there he's back. We're going to put him in the queue. Gives me an opportunity to, tell you that coming up after the news at noon, we're going to open up the telephone lines for the open hour, the Mid-Week Meltdown, your opportunity to talk about whatever it is on your mind. And there's a lot of stuff out there to talk about, and I'm looking forward to hearing from each and every one of you. So make sure you stay tuned. And let's try this again, and I'm going to push the buttons the right way. Dr. John, I apologize. My thumbs took over.
All good.
Stephen's question, you were getting into the respiratory ailments that are around there and how deep they're getting into people's chests and the amount of phlegm.
Yeah, so, for, nasal congestion, decongestants, for the chest stuff, cough suppressants are helpful. Often with these viruses that are lingering, people need a steroid puffer like Flovent or something like that to settle the cough down and to get them kind of back to normal. Sometimes if it's lingering, past 2 weeks, there can be an infectious component. So, sometimes it's worth a look. People may need antibiotics. They usually don't at first, but where it lingers, they may. And I think you mentioned cannabis smoking. I mean, any type of smoking when your lungs are irritated, even if you're a regular smoker, it's like, pouring gas on a campfire. Even if it's a little bit of gas, and it's gonna flare things up a bit. So do with that, what you can. Try to back off on smoking as much as you can. If you use cannabis for specific purposes, try another delivery method, and hopefully that'll, in combination with time, decongestants, a puffer, help settle the lungs down.
Excellent. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000 is the number. A couple of email questions, Dr. John. One of them related to Dr. Google. The emailer's name is Mary asking, do doctors use artificial intelligence when they're going about a diagnosis? Do you use AI?
I don't use an AI program specifically. I mean, I think all of us, look things up, things that are, more obscure, things that we don't see very often. If something's not adding up, this is what I think it is, but what are the other possibilities? Doing a little bit of, backup research just to make sure that you're on the right track, is useful. Having smartphones and computers available is useful. Using actual AI programs, I don't do that. I think some people do. I think it's useful to a point. It doesn't take over from judgment and experience. So, using technology to help streamline something, I think is useful. I don't think the technology is there yet, and at some point it probably will be, but not quite there yet to make definitive decisions. So it's a tool, but not something to be completely relied upon.
Is there an ethics issue with it? I mean, obviously using it for research is one thing, but when we get down the diagnosis lane, would that bring an ethics question in?
I think it might. I mean, it again depends on the quality of the technology. I mean, we've been bombarded for our whole lives with science fiction and programs where the computer makes a diagnosis, where the doctor is a hologram or a robot is making the diagnosis. 20 years ago, that was fun to watch, but nobody thought it was anything close to reality. It's a lot closer to reality, and where it goes, needs to be managed. Much like many things, our ability to keep people alive longer, but also to manipulate genetics and to cloning. There's a lot of other things, out there that potentially can be used and misused, and we have to tread carefully.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Another email question, Dr. John. You mentioned earlier in one of your answers bronchitis. Mike writes that this is the second year in a row that I've come down with bronchitis. Am I more susceptible to it now because I've had it a couple of times before?
I would say yes. I mean, people who tend to get, frequent ear infections, frequent bronchitis, some of it is who they are, what their lungs or their ears are like, their own makeup. some of it is environment, what you're exposing yourself to, weather and that sort of thing. So it's complicated, but yeah, generally yes. I mean, if you've had it before, you're probably more likely, based on your own makeup and genetics, to get it again.
Mike also writes that his doctor tells him that there isn't a whole lot that can be done outside of maybe a puffer. Is that really the only way that you can treat bronchitis, to let it work its course?
I mean, it depends if there's an infectious component. I mean, there's a real tendency to just throw antibiotics at everything. And look, that's gotten better. People are a little more aware of it. But, I had a case last night where somebody was hell-bent that they needed, antibiotics for, what I thought was a viral infection. And, we see more often than people realize, you're treating a virus with antibiotics, it's not going to do anything. And, the logic is, well, last time I had the antibiotics and I got better. And I'm like, yep, you had a virus and viruses get better in time. I could have given you a shot of Captain Morgan or a pizza, and in 2 days you would have gotten better anyway. But we do see people who've had antibiotics who get yeast infections, who get C. diff, a bowel infection that can be quite troubling and quite serious. It's not all benign. And then we talk about antibiotic resistance. So, we really try as much as possible to minimize the use of antibiotics. And, I think in general, the public is coming around to that, but that requires communication and education. And frankly, sometimes when it's busy, whether in the family doctor's office during the video call or in the ER at 3:00 in the morning, people don't feel like having that discussion / argument, which is unfortunately what it sometimes turns into. And, people end up getting antibiotics they don't need. And again, we continue to work on that issue.
Can you write me a prescription for Captain Morgan and pizza?
I think I should. I think it sounds like a great business opportunity.
That would have worked for sure. Last one I got, and this one's for me, Dr. John. I read a story earlier this week that norovirus cases are on the rise in Nova Scotia. What is norovirus, and what are its symptoms?
So norovirus is basically a gastro. It's a virus that can cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. People think of, you hear the word stomach flu or gastro, just, something that can make people quite sick and can be very, very easily spread, from contact. Particles get on a surface, someone touches it, they can get quite sick. So the way to avoid it is, cleanliness, wash your hands, wash surfaces. We see a lot of these outbreaks in nursing homes. People, even though, you or I get something like this, it's not fun, but we hydrate ourselves, we manage. Get someone who's got a lot of other problems, medical problems, they can get quite unwell quite quickly. So really want to try to avoid the outbreaks. Norwalk is the other, people often hear referred to as Norwalk virus. They're the same thing. So yeah, it is around. I didn't see much of that last night, but I've been hearing stories that it's there, and we may be seeing it. So again, hydration, treat the symptoms, wash your hands, wipe down surfaces to prevent spreading it to other people.
And Captain Morgan and pizza.
And Captain Morgan and pizza always.
Dr. John, I appreciate your time. Have a good nap.
Have a great day.
That is Dr. John Gillis here every Wednesday from 11 o'clock until noon to answer your medical-related questions. I think he's onto something with the Captain Morgan and pizza, just saying. We're going to stop, and Blake is going to come in here in just a few minutes to update us on what's going on in the news. And then on the other side of it, it's time for the Mid-Week Meltdown. I've got a couple of things I'm interested in your thoughts on. One of them, the ongoing boil water order with Halifax Water. We're told yesterday that there was a planned power outage at the treatment facility at Pockwalk Lake. The power went out. When it came back on, it blew a fuse, knocked the system down. This isn't the first time that this has happened. We had another outage in July that resulted in the same thing, probably the same amount of time. As I understand it, the water order is still, or advisory, it's not an order, it's an advisory, is still in effect and might be in effect until tomorrow sometime. They said 2 days, but that is just a ballpark. My question to you about Halifax Water is a simple one. Does Halifax Water get a pass on this? Do we just chalk it up to it being one of these freak things that happens? Their spokespeople yesterday saying that they were just days away from having a redundant system online that would prevent something like this from moving forward. Does Halifax Water get a pass? And the other two questions have to do with the 47th, 45th, 47th, 45, 47, whatever we want to call him, President of the United States, and that being Donald Trump. François-Philippe Champagne, the Canadian minister, says that we have to stop playing defense on these tariffs. We need to get out on the front foot. We need to play offense with it. My question for you is that smart, given the transactional nature of Donald Trump? Would that just egg him on? And my second question is this. The Premier of BC yesterday said that British Columbians should maybe take a look or rethink their trips or their plans to visit the United States and purchases of American products. Has the change of government in the United States, the threat of tariffs, the notion of a 51st state, the January 6 pardons, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. Will it impact you traveling or doing business in the United States? Mid-Week Meltdown is next. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes.
X.
Vanessa mixing up the music mix today here on the Todd Veinotte Show. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dan Alstrand, in for Todd today. Don't worry. This was a planned one. He's out for the day, but he's back tomorrow, so you only have to deal with me for another hour, and then I'll go off and right off into the sunset, as it is, so to speak. This is the Midweek Meltdown. This is your chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind. I've got a couple of questions because I'm very curious to your response to them. The first one, of course, the Halifax water question, being that this is the second time the Pocwock facility's gone down. This is the second time the 200,000 people that get their drinking water from Pocwock Lake treatment have had to boil their water for more than a day, probably two or maybe more. Does Halifax Water get a pass on this? We were told yesterday that it was a fuse blowing out after a planned power outage that caused this 30-minute or whatever it was outage that caused the unchlorinated water to flow off into the system. And that's caused us now to be boiling our water. Does Halifax Water get a pass? Are you okay? Do you understand? Are we just going to say, yeah, well, things happen? Are you good with it? Are you even boiling your water? The reason why I'm asking that question is I noticed some people that they just say whatever. It's just a precaution. It's not in order. So when these boil water advisories come out to you, do you follow suit? Do you boil your water? Because I'll tell you what, I was boiling my water yesterday, and I had a heck of a time keeping up. And there's only two people in my house, so I can't. What are you doing if you have a family of four or more? Holy smokes, right? And then the Donald Trump question. François-Philippe Champagne says Canada needs to move off the defensive and onto the offensive when dealing with Donald Trump with regards to this proposed 25-cent tariff. And the BC Premier, EB, said yesterday, urging British Columbians to maybe take a second look at planning a vacation in the United States this time around and watching what you're spending south of the border. Has the Trump presidency changed your plans to travel to the United States or to buy products from down there? 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Lots of open lines if you want to get in. Looking forward to the conversation. We'll start with Aaron. Aaron, how are you?
Hi, Dan. How are you today?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Not too much. It's just calling about whether I'm going to travel to the States or buying their products.
Sure.
Absolutely not. And it'll be a long time before I do. Now, I'm really calling about some calls that came in yesterday when Todd was there. The first one was Chris, who suggested that we should get wobbly kneed, roll over, show the Americans our belly, and submit to them rather than actually fighting this tooth and nail. I would suggest to him that if he thinks that is a good idea, that maybe he should go down there and maybe move to the States or something. I'm getting a little tired of his pro-Trump rants that aren't challenged. Another thing I wanted to talk about was people's idea about oligarchy and thinking that this is something new. Oligarchy started in the Reagan era. Trump has only lifted a very thin veneer off of it and shoving our noses in it right now. So people should understand that's been a long time thing. This is the culmination of it. And another thing I'd like to say is Elon Musk's Nazi salutes yesterday. I wasn't really shocked by it, but I was somewhat shocked by the fact that people were so willing to dismiss what he did, and he meant it. And the fact that people tried to blame that on autism. Autistic people don't do that sort of stuff. Hateful, sociopathic people do that sort of stuff. So we shouldn't blame it. And anybody who thinks that, maybe it wasn't a Nazi thing, I challenge them to go down to their local mall or synagogue and start throwing up those bad boys and see how their day goes on that one. And that's basically all I had to say for today.
Aaron, appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you.
902-405-6000. It's that simple. 902-405-6000. Your chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind. It's the Mid-Week Meltdown. We welcome Gary to the program. Gary, how are you?
Not bad. The Water Commission, lucky why they don't have a backup generator. When the power goes out, that's twice happened, why they don't have a backup generator?
Well, apparently they do, and it just, whatever this fuse that blew, and I'm not an engineer, I don't know the whole system, but apparently it knocked the whole thing out.
Yeah, I'm shocked that the generator didn't cut in.
Yeah, usually it would, right?
What they need, the mayor and the Minister of Environment needs to investigate why that generator didn't cut in.
Fair questions. Absolutely a fair question.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Where are we here, Vanessa? Let's welcome Bertie to the program. Bertie, how are you?
Oh, did you say Bernie?
I did. How are you?
Well, thank you, Dan. I just want to give a big thank you to somebody, if I can. It's
Sure.
the Halifax Infirmary, the urology clinic or whatever they call it. I had to go there yesterday. I was there for 8 hours. Dan, I could not have been treated any better if I was the queen. The staff, Mary Beth and Kim, my nurses, they were the whole 8 hours. They were always right there. And then there was Tim and my two, I think they're, I don't know if they were doctors or radiologists. They were wonderful. So I just have to give a big thank you to them, and they were great.
Bernie, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I said they don't, some people, more criticize them, but I told them I just couldn't because I really couldn't have. If it was my own parents, I wouldn't have been treated any better. So thank you.
Oh, no, and thank you for sharing. That put a smile on a lot of people's faces.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. 902-405-6000. And I know Todd has said it, and I know I've said it, and I'll reiterate it, that my experience, once you get out of the triage, once you get out of the ER and you get into the medical system in Nova Scotia, my experience and many people that I've spoken to is that the level of care is second to none. We have some of the best, most caring medical professionals. Now, I'm sure there are probably exceptions to that, but for the most part, Class A doesn't get any better. And nurses and doctors, for the most part, if you listen to the stories about the hours and the workload and we've been talking about that for years, probably have an excuse to maybe not be as professional, maybe be a little short with people. My experience is they're not. They're absolutely not. And I don't think that that gets shared enough. And I'm glad that Bernie did. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. The Midweek Meltdown continues after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. This is the Midweek Meltdown. I'm Dan Alstrand in for Todd today. The question on the table, well, you talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, but the question I have for you today is, with the change of government in the United States, with all of the stuff that's happening with the tariffs and everything else, that all the executive orders and everything else that has been Trump for the last 2 days, Premier of British Columbia, David Eby, asking people in that province to maybe take a second look at their vacations in the United States and what they purchase in the United States. My question to you is has the change of president in the United States changed your opinion of traveling or doing business in the United States? I got an email from Lee during the break that says, nope, won't be visiting the U.S. anytime soon, but it has nothing to do with Trump. It has everything to do with the way Trudeau has tanked our economy and our dollar. No travel money left after the inflation and dollar devaluation that we've experienced in Canada. And that is from Lee. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. We welcome Chris to the program. Chris, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon, Dan. Look, I called yesterday, and your first caller suggested that Canada roll over and show their belly. That's not what I said at all, if he'd listened to my comments.
Okay.
What I said, I agreed with Todd. When Todd said it wasn't perhaps wise to poke the bear, I agree with that. I'm not going to challenge Mike Tyson to go a few rounds in the ring. If I'm forced to be thrown in the ring with him, I'll do the best that I can. And that's what Canada should do. What I called mainly about was to outline the members, the 18 members on this Tariff Relations Council that Trudeau has set up.
Right.
And in my opinion, I don't see any of them. There might be one or two that are justified in being there, but he has no one from business.
Oh, he's got Arlene Dickinson there.
Yeah. Okay, Arlene Dickinson may be one or two of the ones that are okay, but I personally would not have picked her for it. I Googled basically and looked at the 300 top corporations in Canada. Not one person from any of those corporations are represented. We have no one on that board that represents oil and gas, no bankers or financial people, nobody from CNRCP, which I think might be a good idea, no mining industry reps, no lumber industry reps, no one from the potash and fertilizer industry, no one from agriculture, no one from fisheries, and the list goes on and on.
Right.
These people are not qualified, and they're not capable of going up against Trump and the people he's got there. I listened to the CTV this morning, and they had David Veinotte on for an interview.
Mm-hmm.
He's on this board that Trudeau has set up, and his claim to fame is a former ambassador to the U.S., and all as he did throughout the interview was call Trump's a bully, Trump's a bully. We have to punch the bully in the nose. Taunting Trump. You don't think that Trump's not getting feedback from all of these news programs about him? Of course he is. And if he doesn't have any intention of blanketing all of our goods with a 25% tariff, taunting him and calling him a bully is no way to behave if you want to keep that mindset. But if he does put tariffs, we have to do something in retaliation. What that is, I don't know, but I think negotiation is going to be the best thing. And in my opinion, the Tariff Relations Council, these 18 members, he's got a bunch of wrong people on there. I don't know if you're aware of who's on there, Dan, or not.
I don't know them all. I know Jean Charest is one of them. I understand Stephen McNeil is part of that too.
Yep.
So, there's some political leaders there as well. So, Chris, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're suggesting that the strong but silent approach is the way that we go about this until we know more.
Don't telegraph our intentions, for God's sake. I mean, you don't get in the ring with someone and say, now look, I'm going to hit you with a left hook and then an uppercut. You don't tell them. You just go in there and do what you have to do if you have to. But what the main thing I'm trying to say is that tariffs are not good for Canada. They're not good for the United States. It's business related. Tariff is related to business. We don't need Jean Charest, Stephen McNeil, Rachel Notley, Jody Thomas, Trudeau's former national security advisor. I mean, what the hell are these people doing on there? We need business people that understand what trading with the States is all about. We don't need this bunch of political hacks and bureaucrats and Trudeau-friendly people. We got the wrong bunch of people to negotiate this deal. We're not going to win against Trump, not with those people, that's for sure, with the 18 members he set up on that Tariff Council. We're not going to win against Trump. How can you? The United States is 10 times bigger than us population-wise, and Trump's not the kind of guy that wants to lose. Whether he loses or not, it can't look like he's lost. And taunting him like McNaughton did this morning, calling him a bully. Maybe he is a bully, but we don't get on national television programs and call him a bully and say you have to punch the bully in the nose when you're trying, hopefully, and hoping that the bully is not going to put these tariffs on you. It's the wrong approach. I don't think it does any good. Danielle Smith's approach is a much, much better one. I would say that for sure.
So spend more on American products and hope that he just forgets about us, because that's the way she's talking.
No, I don't say spend more money on American
That's what she said. We need to spend more on American products.
Well, in some cases, maybe we have to. I'm not sure about that. I personally am not going to go out and spend more money on American products. I try and buy my products where I can from Nova Scotian companies and Atlantic companies and then Canadian companies in that order. And when I have to buy stuff that's made in the States or China or whatever, I mean, I buy it if it's stuff I have to have. But I personally go out and I look at the labels and I try my best to buy Canadian-made products, not American or any other country or area of the world, unless I absolutely have to. And you can't buy everything you need made in Canada. It just isn't done that way. We don't manufacture everything that people need. But we do have to look at this situation totally differently than what a lot of people are saying, I think. You don't come out with all this bluster against Trump. Trump's the king of bluster. I mean, you're not going to outmaneuver him. There's no way. And if you piss him off, then he might just say, 25% here, maybe I'll go 30%, maybe I'll go 40%, maybe I'll cover everything instead of the cherry picking it like maybe I was going to. They're approaching it the wrong way, I think, and act on it if you have to, after it happens, if it happens, and by the way it happens. But this tariff council is a joke that he's set up. It's a real joke, in my opinion.
Chris, appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, Dan.
902-405-6000. Agree with Chris that we're going about this all wrong, that we should just mind our P's and Q's until we know what the tariffs are and then react to it? Or should we do like Mr. McNaughton said, punch the bully in the nose? 902-405-6000. Let's grab one more here before the break. Let's welcome Lowell to the program. Lowell, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Dan? I really appreciate your balanced approach to different points of view. In jest, we could send Chris to negotiate. There's some truth to what he said, but I'm just going to mention something here in 30 seconds.
Sure.
Trump, there's a book published by Bob Woodward. You may remember the Watergate affair way back there.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but he's written 5 books on 4 other presidents, and in 2018 he wrote this book called Fear, which is called Trump in the White House by Bob Woodward, and everything in it is quite authenticated, and it's really, I know it's $40 to buy it, at least I bought it a year ago, but if anyone wants to truly try to understand this man and how he functions and what his White House was like, the first at least 2 years that Woodward was talking to people, actually people that were part of the staff and whatnot. But the thing is, it's an amazing book. And one of the quotes that he gave, he was interviewed by Bob Woodward and Robert Costa in March 31st, 2016 at the Trump International Hotel in Washington, and they asked him, what do you think real power is? And here's what he said: I don't even want to use the word fear. He said, fear is the power. So the book's called Fear, Trump in the White House by Bob Woodward, and it's an amazing book. It's over 400 pages, but it's unbelievable what type of person he was then, and God knows what he will be like in the next 4 years.
Paul, appreciate the call, sir.
You're welcome.
902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Donald Trump again leading the charge on the calls today. Interested in your thoughts on A, does Francois Philippe Champagne and David McNaughton, from what our last caller told us, have it right with Trump? Do we need to punch him in the nose? Or do we follow what Chris had suggested earlier, and that we just mind our P's and Q's? We just, stay in the shadows until we know what these tariffs, if they're tariffs or what they are in percentages and those kind of things, and then lay out our battle attack plan after that. Also, are you planning to change the way that you consume the United States? Travel, purchases. Premier David Eby in BC says that we should maybe take a look at our vacations to the United States. Are you still planning to go to Disney World? Are you still planning to go to Las Vegas? Are you still planning to go to wherever it is you go into the United States for your vacations? Or has the change in government in the U.S. maybe changed your mind a little bit? Again, 902-405-6000 is the telephone number. We're back after the news. Welcome back to the Mid-Week Meltdown. I'm Dan Olstrand in for Todd for the next 30 minutes or so. 902-405-6000, your chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind. We're talking about Halifax water. We're talking about Donald Trump. It's a smorgasbord of fun and frivolity here on the program today. 902-405-6000 is the number. Let's go to Bernie. Bernie, how are you?
How you doing, Dan?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Good program.
Thank you.
I'd like to congratulate your first caller. I think he was bang on. He said it had a lot of the sentiments that I was feeling myself about Donald Trump and the way things are falling out in Canada. I just say one of the first moves Donald Trump was to kill the sanctions on the Israeli settlers in the West Bank, and now I see there's major fighting in the West Bank. In Israel and in the United States, you got far-right expansionist governments. Donald Trump already mentioned Greenland. He mentioned Panama Canal. He mentioned Canada as the 51st state. And I think the right wing in Israel had the same idea. They got their eyes on Gaza and the West Bank and all that waterfront. As far as Canada goes, what Canada should do, it's not the time for kiss asses. In the States, they got the presidency. The Republicans got the presidency. They got the House. They got the Senate. So if these conservatives in Canada change their name to Republican, they'll have Canada. I don't think that they're the ones that could stand up and fight for Canada because they're too kiss-assy.
Bernie, can't argue your points.
Okay.
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. I don't know about the waterfront in Israel and in Gaza, but I did see that there was a major operation in the West Bank yesterday, so we'll keep our eye on that. Expansionist plans for Donald Trump. I mean, we've talked about it here a lot, right? One of the things that, and I won't take up much time, but one of the things that caught my attention the most, and there was a lot of things that caught my attention during the inaugural speech, but was the very direct words that President Trump used about Panama. And it was essentially, we're going to take it back. So, you can't do that through economic sanctions. So is he planning to take the Panama Canal back? 902-405-6000. Where are we going next here? Michael, how are you?
How you doing today, Dan?
I'm good, sir. What's on your mind?
You were bang on about the health care. We got the best health care system that any country in the world would want. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for our health care system.
Right.
And even the follow-up care. I got multiple myeloma. There's no cure for it. It's a second type of a blood cancer, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just got to do what the doctors tell you and take what they give you. And that's exactly what they're doing for me, and I'm so thankful for it. But I'll tell you one thing, Dan. If it's the last breath I take today, if it comes between me standing up and fighting for Canada and passing on to our children in the future something that's proud to say that my grandfather or my grandmother left that for us to look after and thank them for it, I'll do that. But I will not hesitate, because people that hesitate are lost. Levy in British Columbia is absolutely right what he said. Don't go there. Don't buy nothing from them. It's time for us to expand our borders. It's time for us, and that committee they got formed, thank God they're willing to go and sit on the committee, because I'm sure they're more qualified people than me or you or the next guy sitting on it. And I'm glad to see that we have a committee there that's willing to stand up. You got to realize that over 3/4 of the corporations in Canada are owned from the United States or somewhere else in the world. So we got to take the initiative and be proud to say that we're Canadians and we're willing to have backbone, like Rick Hall used to always tell me. Mike, as long as you got the backbone that you got and you're willing to stand up and fight for something as valuable as this country, there's nothing but good come out of that, and I attribute that to surviving up to this day. And I just want to thank you for that opportunity, Dan, because before I take my last breath, I don't know when it's going to come, I'll stand up and fight for this country and fight for the people that made it easy for me and fight for the institutions that kept me alive this long. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, buddy.
Appreciate it, Michael, and I'll stand right beside you when you do that. And I think that many of, if not all of the people that are calling in today will do the very same thing. I think that we may differ in opinion on approach. I think we may differ in opinion on tact. I think we may differ in opinion on if this is a real threat or not. That being said, if the threat it becomes a clear and present danger, to steal a book title, I don't think there's many of us that won't do what Michael said and stand up and defend our country in the best way that we can. Maybe I'm naive, but that's just the feeling that I get. Let's welcome Mike to the program. Mike, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
I'll switch gears. I won't talk about Trump. How's that?
Okay, fair enough.
So, no, I listen to my radio all day, and I start my day off with Griffin Caroline, then I listen to Todd, then I listen to Rob.
Uh-huh.
I'm just curious, why do we lose the last, 45 minutes of the Rob Snow Show every day?
Not available to us.
Reruns.
It doesn't.
Oh, really?
We don't get reruns. We get 2 hours of Rob Snow. We get his first hour and his first hour of his call in, and then we do the news. The third hour is just not available to us.
It's just the news. Okay, no, I was just curious why it just went to the news and.
Easy.
Why is that not? Why it's not? Why is it not?
I don't have the answer for you. I really don't know. But that's the cards I get dealt, and that's the programming we have.
Oh, right on. All right, man. Have a good day.
Easy question. Thanks, Mike. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Where are we next? Gary. Gary, how are you?
Good. Yourself?
I am well, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted – no, this is strictly my opinion, but I just wanted to mention about doing away with the bridge fares.
Okay.
I heard it quoted, $40 million they're going to lose or is generated during the year.
Yeah, every year.
So where are they going to get the $40 million that is generated to keep the bridges in good repair if they do away with the tolls?
I think you know the answer to that one, don't you?
Yeah. Taxes are going up.
They're going to come right out of your pocket.
Yeah. And it doesn't make sense, really. It really doesn't. And also with the people that are implementing the money for the bridge passes, they're going to get laid off. So
yeah, well, I would imagine. I don't know that for sure, but I would imagine they wouldn't need to have the commissionaires at the toll booths anymore.
No, or that the new facility that is there by is it Princess Margaret Boulevard?
Yeah. Where I think Halifax Harbor Bridges is still going to exist, but I don't think it'll be as big an organization as it was or it is now.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, why would they still exist? They probably still exist for so the bridges are kept are looked after.
I would imagine.
But if they don't have the revenue, like I said, and like you just said, you know where it's going to come from.
Yep.
Why do away with the tolls when it's in place and the money being generated is being used to look after the repair of the bridges? It doesn't make sense to me.
Good question for the Premier.
Yes, you're right. and I missed my opportunity when it was on the radio, but I had something else on the go. But no, I just thought I'd put that out there. But, I like to, if somebody else has an opinion, I'd like to hear it.
Gary, appreciate the call, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
902-405-6000. The Midweek Meltdown continues after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We are back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Midweek Meltdown. Just a few minutes left, so we'll try to get to as many calls as we can. Let's begin with Laura. Laura, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Good. I want to mention that sometimes there's a little tiny throwaway comment made by Todd, and the listeners get so upset about it. So yesterday he had a call from Michael. They talked about the Musk salute, and he didn't go into detail and belabor it for 10 minutes. And there was a lot of criticism online about him being a Rogers puppet or a far-right mouthpiece. And I can't understand how anyone else could listen to the show and think that about Todd. He's not that way. So it's like, I feel like I'm crazy, or maybe I'm just naive. It's like I'm listening to the same show as these people, and they're hearing one thing and I'm hearing another. And I think it's an amazing job the two of you do. Everybody calls in and throws big whoppers at you. You have no idea it's from out in left field, and you guys are able to respond right away. And all because he didn't go into a big, long spiel about shutting that down with this, Musk salute. So much criticism, not warranted. I love the show.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate the call.
Okay.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Where are we here? Tony, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind today? I bet you I can guess.
Weeks ago I said that I'm going to charge Chris with plagiarism. Weeks ago I said, don't be poking the bear.
Right.
Yeah, and shortly after that, after the inauguration or just prior to, I said that, and Chris used the exact word I used, and I'm sure you heard the show, is that you shouldn't be telegraphing your plays. That's a good way to get beat in any kind of conflict or game, whatever you want to call it. So the bottom line here is Canada is a day late and a dollar short. The government is in total disarray in this country. And I'm not saying Canada is bad. I'm saying that Canada's got problems in its own leadership at this point, and this stale old leadership is trying to tackle the bear. That's like a middle heavyweight going after the heavyweight champion. They're not using any guile. They're not using any common sense. You don't poke the damn bear. Trump loves that crap. The more you poke him, the more he's going to get on you. And it's that simple. There's nothing to it. Now, I'm going to go back to me. I'm a little selfish with this. I've been accused of being a liberal, extreme liberal on this program by one caller, and an extreme rightist on the other by one caller. I'm neither one. I'm an independent. But I am an American citizen. I am a Canadian PR, and I can look calmly at both sides of the situation. Canada is in trouble. You got 40 million people. The United States has got 7 or 8 times that. Their economy can stand whatever you may throw at them much better than you can stand what they throw at Canada. For God's sakes, don't roll over. I'm not saying roll over and play dead. I'm saying use some common sense. Use some common sense. You got to unite. You got Alberta, they don't know what they want. You got Quebec today going, he doesn't know what he wants. He just doesn't want to get beat up. The bottom line here is Trump's a bad dude. I don't know if you saw the letter I wrote about democracy. One guy accused me of not knowing what the definition of democracy is. Well, you tell me what Trump has done that is democratic in nature, or why don't you tell me what he has done that isn't democratic in nature already 3 days into his administration? You ain't seen nothing yet. You have not seen nothing yet, not only for your country, and I said the world was in trouble if this son of a gun, almost said it.
Almost.
If this son of if this son of a gun was elected. You ain't seen nothing yet. He is going to. He's loose. Look at his administration. He's 9 out of 11 of his cabinet are convicted felons. 9 out of 11. Well, I don't want to say felons. They've been convicted of crimes or doing things that are not very good in courts. I mean, this guy is loose. The U.S. is in trouble. Would I go to the U.S.? Listen, I'm a U.S. citizen. I have my whole family, with the exception of my wife's family here in Canada, are in the U.S. My immediate family is in the U.S. I have no plans on going. I'm not going. Why should I walk into that storm? You know, the best way to avoid the storm is go around it, not head straight into it. And I love Canada. I love living here. But Canadian people, you can look at the fight over your head. Get down, get smart, don't telegraph your actions, and move on. I don't know who should be the Prime Minister of Canada. I got no idea. If you told me you have a vote, what would it be tomorrow? Yeah, I'd tell you what it would be, Pierre Poilievre. Only because Carney is nothing more than a carbon copy of Trudeau, or vice versa. So, in my opinion, that's my opinion. So, I want the best for Canada. I'm living here.
So Tony, and I don't want to cut you off, man, but I mean, is it the best approach to just let Donald just take body shot after body shot after body shot after body shot?
I didn't. See, Dan, you're trying to interpret what I said. I never said that.
He said, "Don't poke the bear." Isn't that what that is?
He does. Your government right now may be taking aim at what he's done so far. Well, maybe that's a diversion. You don't know that. You know, the next thing he may say, well, you're not. If he gets past this and he's not happy with it, NATO will be the next subject. You can believe that. With Canada, he will come up with NATO and say, well, look, here we are protecting you. We're your big brother, and you're crapping on your big brother by not living up to your obligations.
Yeah, and he wants it increased to 5% instead of 2% as well.
Hello, Dan. Listen to what Tony tells you. I haven't been very far wrong in a long time on this issue. So you watch what happens. I don't want to see it happen. I'm here. I suffered the repercussions from it as well. I mean, you know, I can't win. I go to one side of the border or I go to the other side of the border. I live here. I've lived here continually now for almost 25 years, with very short periods of being out of the country. So I probably lived more in Canada than I've lived in the U.S. But at any rate, come on, let's do it smart. Let's be smart about it.
Tony, have a good one.
You too, Dan. Thank you for listening.
902-405-6000. I don't know, and you know, Tony's is a pretty smart guy, and so is Chris and others that have done it. But you know, I just to use David McNaughton's analogy that he's a bully, right? And you know, when you don't react, when you just sit back and take it, then the bully just keeps being a bully. And I understand the argument that if we poke the bully, then, you know, maybe he gets madder. I don't know. But just sitting back doing nothing, I know it's the Canadian way to do things. Sorry, not sorry. But how much is too much? When do we just say, no, you know what, enough of this? Who gets the last word today? Let's welcome Don to the program, who gets the last word. Don, how are you?
Hello, sir. How you doing?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Well, I see where the Dragons game is onto it now. They got the former Steve McNeil premier and onto it now. Is he going to come up with someone else now today about going on Team Canada? If they would just leave it up to, you know what they should really do? And Doug Ford's for going real. I'm a conservative all the way, right?
Yep.
Seriously, I am. No doubt about it. Anybody sees me, that's it. Anyway, but Doug Ford, he's going for re-election. Take off the hat, right? And all that. Come on, take off the hat. Be reasonable. Now, if you would leave Danielle Smith, I say myself, and Larry, go down there and talk to him. Look, stand up to a bully and walk away. It's always for me not now that there's a bully. There's a lot of bullies in politics, right? You know that, Dan.
That's how politics works. Really?
And believe me, I've been in politics behind the scenes for 50-some years or more. I've seen a lot of it. And I'll tell you, even our own members, they backstab you. You know what I mean by that, don't you? On all parties.
Yep.
So, really, what I'm trying to say is to you, if Danielle Smith's sticking up for Alberta, of course. And Kevin O'Leary, smart. But to have the Dragons down in there and say, look, we can't stand this here, we can't. And, you know, McNeil, too, and all of that there, what did he do for the problems, really? Put us in debt. But in the last 9 years, we're in more debt than I don't know what. He'll come up with another thing. Pierre Poilievre said this very thing. Come in, win an election, have a new prime minister, and go on with it. That's what we vote those people in here for, to represent us, right? We hire them on to represent Canada, Nova Scotia, and the city, right? So why bring in everybody like that, the other people from outside, pay their expenses, pay them a little token, when we got our own people in there, okay? And as far as like Jolly saying, well, we're not, you know what? Leave it alone for now. Not leave it alone, but just concentrate, like Tony just said, and all like that. So, I mean, every time we turn on TV, it's tariff. Something if we get sick of this there, and the media too now, Dan. No disrespect to you or Vanessa or Todd, but the media, especially CNN and CBC, you know what I mean? It just gets on you. Just leave us take lunch with another program and just let it.
Don, I don't want to cut you off, man, but we're up against the break. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, have a good one. 902-405-6000 is the number. The open hour will be back tomorrow. So will Todd. Gotta go. Thank you very much to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass for keeping things in order-ish. Have a great day, everyone. And if I don't see you, remember, be kind to one another.